All right, I think we are live. Hello, everyone. Hope you're all doing well. We are so excited to be here with you today for this edition of BBC, all about prepping for your telehealth session. My name is Jen Miller. This is Brittany. We are both business success coaches with Practice Better, and we drop in to do these YouTube lives every single month to share on a topic that we think you will really benefit from. So we hope you're interested in what we have to share with you today. If we have anyone joining us live, or if there is anyone watching the replay, please feel free to comment below. Let us know that you're here. Say hello. We would love to hear from you. So yeah, Britt, let's dive right in if you're good to go. So what we wanted to chat about today again is all about preparing for your telehealth session. And so, we know this is something very relevant for many of you in that you work online with clients and run sessions virtually, right? So this is such a great way to see clients. It can offer you a lot of flexibility while still allowing you to really get those great results with your clients. But it's important to, set yourself and your client up for success during the telehealth session by doing a little bit of preparation, right? So preparing yourself sort of on the practitioner side, but also preparing your client so that they know what to expect and so on. And, as we know, technology, different people have varying levels of comfortability with technology and doing a virtual session. And so, it's key to really have that process in place to make sure it runs smoothly for you and your client. So yeah, we're going to dive into today some just simple strategies to really help you prepare for a successful telehealth session. So before we dive in, just wanted to ask, again, anyone who might be joining live or watching the replay, if you have sort of a process to prepare for your telehealth sessions, or if this is something that you're looking to improve on. So just let us know in the comments below. But the first thing that we really wanted to dive into was looking kind of at the client side of things. So really making sure that you set your client expectations. And so what we mean by that is really all about setting your client up for success during the telehealth session. So looking at what you can do beforehand to really make sure it runs smoothly on their end, right? Because their experience is directly linked to your experience and their ability to get good results in that side of things. So a couple of points here. So we really think it's important to set those clear expectations with your client for how the session will run, what they can expect, and that will make sure that they feel comfortable and mitigate, maybe any nervousness or even like misaligned expectations with the client too. So things like, the duration of the session, what you'll be working on together, maybe even if it's relevant to just remind them on your own scope of practice and what you are and aren't able to support them with. So anything, that you think is important to really set their expectations on before the session is really key. Another piece is any forms or information that you need from them. So really making sure you have a process in place to have them complete those forms or receive that information from them ahead of time. So providing those clear due dates for them. With this in Practice Better, you could even utilize the tasks feature and set reminders for your client to send that information to you, whether it's completing a form or something else. The other thing that's really important too, that may help again with that sort of comfortability piece for your client, is just reminding them of the privacy and security aspect of the platform that you're using. So with Practice Better, our telehealth and everything within the platform is HIPAA compliant. And, just reminding your client of that prior to the session can be really helpful, just so that, they feel extra comfortable that they can share, personal and sensitive information without, risk of any, privacy or security issues. It just sort of gives them that peace of mind. So that's something you could consider, having as part of that, process in terms of setting them up for success prior to this session. Another piece too to consider is, potentially sharing ahead of time how the client can communicate with you after the session if they have more questions. And again, that's sort of just to give them peace of mind that, if they happen to think of something that you don't have time to cover in the session or anything like that, that they sort of know what that is ahead of time. They know what to expect in terms of how to communicate with you. And in addition to that, it will also help you to set your boundaries ahead of time, just to be really clear on what will happen after the session as well, just so that both of you are on the same page when you're actually going into that telehealth session, right? So those are just a couple of ideas of, simple ways to set your client up for success. And one way you could really pull this all together that we really love, that Britt and I were chatting about before this, is to actually just create like a simple PDF document even that you can share ahead of time with the client that has all of these points outlined, just to be really clear and just set their expectations with them, make sure they have all the information they need prior to the session. So again, maybe that's, just confirming the duration of the session, any information they need to share with you ahead of time and those deadlines, maybe tech requirements, which we're going to dive into a little bit later in more detail, as that can be a sticky one sometimes. So just really pulling that together in a simple document that you can just share with the client before the session to really set them up for success. So we're actually going to show you, so stick around towards the end, because we're going to demonstrate in Practice Better how you could share that and sort of, facilitate sharing that type of document with your client to help support them.
Yeah, exactly. And similar to what Jen was saying about setting your client up for success, you'll want to do the same for yourself. So giving yourself that familiarity with what you'll be covering in the session. So obviously you're setting expectations with the client, helping them kind of know what will be on the agenda so that they feel comfortable walking into the meeting, but it will also help you prepare too. So you're not walking in blindly and then having to fill that half an hour or however long the session is with on the spot. So it will allow you to kind of do that homework in advance to make sure that you have everything that you need to conduct the session, get the information that you need from them, figure out how you can support them, all of that. So kind of is beneficial both for the practitioner and the client to really think about what you'll be covering and set those expectations with the client up front. And when we're thinking about how you can set yourself up for success in a telehealth session, sometimes it will help to have kind of an arsenal of tools that you can pull from. If the conversation does start to lag, or maybe the client is new to video sessions and they're not feeling too comfortable conversing in that medium. So what you can do to really inspire more conversation is to focus more on open-ended questions. So that will just help, keep the conversation flowing. And even if you find that you do need to ask a yes or no question, one tip that I really love is that you can ask those yes or no questions. You don't have to shy away from them completely, but you can ask them to tell you more or expound on what they mean by their yes or no. I know as a practitioner, I had been in sessions with clients where they would give me really short yeses or nos and leave it at that. And it would really trip me up, even though this is a medium that I'm comfortable on. So tell me more can be a really useful way of getting your client to expand and open up a little bit more as to why they're feeling that way or how they landed at that particular decision. And remind the client that they should be in a comfortable environment. So you will likely touch on some sensitive topics or things that feel very personal to them, maybe confidential. So you could also encourage them to use the chat. So use the chat alongside the video feature to, if they're in an environment where they can't speak openly and they're worried about somebody overhearing, or they would prefer to just type their answer, you could also let them know that in advance, that that's a medium available to them as well, should anything come up that feels sensitive or private to them. Kind of along the lines of those open-ended questions, what you could do in advance is think of a few icebreakers to help that client feel at ease. So I'll actually be showing you a note template where I've included a few just quick bullet point icebreakers, more as a prompt for me as a practitioner, so that, again, if the conversation is lagging or I'm picking up on some uneasiness from the client, maybe some nervous energy, I can ease the conversation and, just make it feel very casual and lighthearted before we dive into more of the the pertinent stuff for the actual session. So some little reminders for myself that I'll be sharing with you guys there. You can come up with a template and then just have them there for you to peek at if you need them. And then similarly, we always want to kind of maintain our schedule with our time boundaries. And even if you're telling your client in advance, once the conversation ramps up and you're getting in the flow of things and there's lots of conversations, you could need to remind them of that duration in a delicate way, right? So I've also included a few questions to help wrap up the session, again, more as just prompts for me as the practitioner, so that if we're nearing that time limit, I can just gently remind the client that our time is coming to an end, and give them next steps if they do have any additional questions for me as the practitioner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that, Britt. I love the idea of creating that note template, which, like you said, we'll show in a minute here, but it just gives you as the practitioner that comfortability that, like, as you said, if you feel a lull in conversation, or, you know, maybe you get tripped up with something, you can always sort of refer back to just these little prompts that you've set up for yourself. Even if you are, you know, a very seasoned practitioner, this can be helpful just to have a bit of an outline that you can always come back to. And, you know, it could not only be some of those, you know, like time prompts or icebreaker type questions, but also just with the standard type questions that you want to ask the client in that session. So, you know, you could create that with the note template too. So just a really nice way to set yourself up for success. Yeah, I love that. Okay, so what I wanted to share next is the tech side of things. So this is always, you know, an interesting one, you know, just because, like we said earlier, everyone has varying levels of comfortability with technology, right? And when you're doing a virtual session, a telehealth session, of course, you're making use of a lot of technology. And so, you know, maybe it's on your side or the client side. It's important to just set yourself up for success with the technology piece itself. So there's a few sort of key steps you can take ahead of your telehealth session from a tech perspective to make sure it runs smoothly. So the first thing we wanted to share is browser compatibility. So if you're using telehealth within Practice Better, you'll want to make sure that you have the latest version of your browser. And the compatible browsers for Practice Better Telehealth are Google Chrome, Safari, and Firefox. So if you use a different browser and you're having issues, that may be the reason. But yeah, just as you're setting yourself up before the session, you'll want to make sure you have the latest version of one of those 3 browsers. The other thing is to test your audio. So you will have to, when you're using Practice Better Telehealth, grant permission for Practice Better to use your camera and microphone. So you'll want to definitely test that ahead of time, as well as have your client test that. So all of these things that I'm sharing are both something that you can do as a practitioner, but also to share with your client to test ahead of time as well. And then stable internet connection. I mean, that's just sort of, you know, a basic one, but an important one. You could even share like an internet test speed link with your client so they can test that in advance and make sure that it's, you know, a strong connection, a consistent and stable connection. That's the most important thing with these sessions, is just that stable connection. And then the last thing is just to understand the technology from your client side. So, you know, we always recommend with Practice Better to have a test client that you set up, that you can actually go in as the test client to see how things look from the client perspective. So this is really recommended for the tech piece as well when running your telehealth session. So you can actually test that out from the client's perspective to make sure you're able to talk them through, you know, the steps if they're having any issues, how they can start the session, you know, muting, volume, like all that kind of stuff. Just sort of the basics, but it's good to have that insight from the client side so you can, you know, prompt them if they're having any issues. But yeah, so those are just some, you know, simple steps you can take from that tech perspective to make sure that your telehealth session is going to run smoothly. And we have with Practice Better, a telehealth troubleshooting document that has all of these steps listed. So you can always refer back to that anytime. And we can also, you know, you could also share that with your client too. So just making sure that you're comfortable with the tech, both you and your client feel that it can run smoothly from that perspective. And yeah, just a couple simple steps to make sure that that can happen.
Yeah, I love the idea of sharing that troubleshooting FAQ. That would be really helpful. But let's jump into the demo. So I'm going to share my screen, and Jen, maybe you can let me know when you see that up here.
Yeah, for sure.
You see that?
Yeah, looks great.
Awesome. Okay, so we mentioned a note template as a way of kind of structuring some questions in advance to prompt you as a practitioner if there's ever a lull or you just need kind of a reminder of the things that you want to ask or collect. So this here is a template that I've created as an example for today. So I have broken it up into different text box sections with different kind of categories here. So I mentioned here icebreakers. So these are more for just myself, that if I'm feeling the client needs to kind of ease into the conversation and they need a little bit more time to feel comfortable. These are some things that I can ask or kind of bring up or mention in a very conversational way to just help the client feel more comfortable. So maybe I'm noticing that they had a delicious recipe in their journals that I can mention to them. If they had a birthday or a holiday has just happened, we can chat about that quickly. If I've listened to a great podcast that I think that they would enjoy or benefit from, or similarly, a book or TV recommendation. So these are really all kind of light and fluffy, but a way to just ease into the conversation and hear from me if I need them as a practitioner. So maybe I don't need them at all if the client feels very comfortable conversing over video, but if I do, they're there. And then I have the next section here, a recap of the previous session. So this is just to kind of bring the client and myself up to speed with what we spoke about in the last session and some goals with that. And you'll notice that the questions I have here are all open-ended. So that's intentional. I want to kind of encourage that flowing conversation with my client and ways to kind of expand on those questions once I do hear from them. So again, just some reminders to myself or some prompts to myself of things that I can ask, the type of information that I want to be collecting. And similarly with new goals and tasks. So kind of the first half of the session will be the recap or the first portion, and then we can move on to more of the new goals and tasks that they'll set off on following the session. At the end here, so I have this last text box session where I have included some wrap-up prompts. So these are ways that I can gently let the client know that our time is coming to an end so that we can maintain the duration of the session as best as possible. Oftentimes as practitioners, you might have back-to-back sessions or sessions that run very close together, and it can be a domino effect where if one runs over, then one starts late and it ends late, and it can just mess up your whole day. So this is a really important section here where, again, it just prompts for me as a practitioner where I know ways that I can just very lightly start to wrap up the conversation if the client is still really going and has lots of conversation and questions still that they're asking. Okay, so this is really simple. If I wanted, I can just have this up as a reminder, or I could actually start to create this note with the particular client and fill out some of their information within these sections here. So you could use it either way. But again, we thought that the note template was a really nice way of prompting yourself as a practitioner so that you feel prepared and get the information that you need and can also fill in those lulls in the conversation. The other thing that we wanted to share with you, and kind of a similar idea, was snippets. So snippets are a way of saving a body of text that you can essentially use anywhere within Practice Better. So the way that I like to kind of describe this is it's like copying and pasting, but you don't have to go and find the text and copy it to be able to paste it. So it's available to you anywhere. So I have 3 created here for today's example for the telehealth. So let's click into Telehealth 1. So the intention with this one would be that I can share this in the chat with the client prior to their first video session with me. So if this is brand new to them, I can just enter this snippet, and I'll show you how to do that in a second there, into the client chat. And they know that they have to go to their document folder to review a PDF that I've shared with them in advance so that they can be fully prepared. But now I don't have to type that out manually every single time I want to share that with a client who's having their first video session with me. For the next one here, so this would be something that, they get after they've had their first one. This will just be kind of what they can expect. So I've dropped in here the duration of the meeting. I've asked them to come prepared with any questions from the last session, and I've given a little bit of explanation or set the expectation about what we'll be talking about in the session. So this is just a nice little reminder and kind of sets the stage for that conversation before we actually have it here. All right, and then the last one I have here, so it's actually called post-telehealth, but I know we're talking about prepping for the telehealth session, so this is just something to have in advance if you need it. So this is one where I just have basically given them next steps. So if we wrapped up that 30-minute follow-up session and they had more and I had to kind of wrap things up, I can pop into the chat and just leave this so that they know their next steps to get their questions answered and the support that they need from me. Okay, so as far as using the snippets, it's really easy. You can use them anywhere essentially that you can use a body of text, but you'll just use these little curly brackets, whatever they're officially called, and it will pull up a list of your different snippets that you've saved. You can click it or type it, and then it will pop up. So again, kind of similar to that whole copying and pasting thing, but you're not having to go and find the body of text, copy it, and then go elsewhere to paste it in. All you need to do is just save that snippet and then use the curly brackets wherever you intend to actually place the snippet. So really, that's just a way of having some things prepped in advance for you to use in relation to your telehealth session. And it's helping to mitigate that busy work of doing the same thing over and over again, right? All right, we have one last kind of idea to share with you guys. So I'm going to go to my client, Mary Smith here, and navigate over to her documents section. So Jen mentioned kind of creating a PDF or a guide for the client to share in advance in relation to their telehealth session or their video meeting with you. So I've created a video session prep checklist, which is lots of different information for the client to review in advance. So we'll just wait for that to pop up. Jen, can you see that PDF there?
Yeah, it looks great. Yeah.
Okay, so I have a few checkboxes just at the top, some questions for the client to make sure that they have completed these things. And then I have an article from our Help Article Center on Practice Better. So all about how to join a telehealth session. So if this is new to them, this will walk them through how they are actually joining that video session with you. And then lots of different steps about how they can be testing all their tech. So testing their audio, their camera, their internet connection. At the very end here, I've given them how they can test in Zoom. So this will just allow them to have a place where they go and can actually test their microphone and their camera and all of that. And then a place where they can actually look at their internet connection to make sure that that's stable. But like Jen said, you can get really kind of deep into this PDF and what you're sharing with them. So you could overview different guidelines, like how long the session will be, if there's anything additional that you didn't get to today, what the next steps are. So you can include all of that in the PDF as well. So that is it for the example today.
Yeah. And one thing I was going to just mention, Britt, is I love it in the PDF format. And you could also, if you wanted, build it as a form too. That's another option. Just because I saw you had those check boxes and I thought, yeah, you could definitely build that as a form too. And then send that way. Not, you don't necessarily need them to fill much in, but if you wanted to just have it built into the platform versus like having it as an attachment PDF, that would be another option. That could work well too.
I had the same thought, and what you could do is set it to be reoccurring. So you could also have it automated where every time they have a follow-up session, that's going out before the session, so that they're actually testing their tech before each session, because things with your internet can change and things can happen. So you could also have it just automated and not have to worry about it, or even set up a task for your client. So lots of different ways to kind of bring it to their attention.
Yeah, I love that. Cool. Well, yeah, I think that sort of covers everything we wanted to get to today. But like we said a few times, for anyone is joining us live or joining us for the replay, we'd love to hear from you on what your thoughts are around what we've just shared, maybe what your biggest takeaway is and what you're going to use next time for your next telehealth session with your client to really help set yourself and the client up for success. So just comment below. Yeah, and I think we can wrap up there, Britt, unless there was anything else you wanted to share.
I think that's everything for today. Like Jen mentioned, we are here monthly to talk about different business building things in relation to the platforms. You can always like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and that way you won't miss any of our live sessions or any of the replays either.
Awesome. Yeah. And if you do, one last thing, just if you do have questions from what we shared today about Practice Better in the platform, you can reach out to our customer success team anytime for help, support, troubleshooting questions, whatever it may be. And you can reach them at help@practicebetter.io.